There was a huge amount of traffic in Toronto over the past couple of days, and that's because Ross Atkins threw his manager, John Schneider, under the bus. There was a big backlog on the DVP, and a lot of reporters got into the action. A lot of them got into the Ross hate trade, so we'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jay's Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And what we saw over the past couple of days from Ross Atkins was a sign of lack of leadership. And that's someone that you just don't want to work for. It doesn't matter what field you're in. You don't want to work for a guy who won't have your back and for a guy who will do anything to save his job, but will throw people under the bus over the meantime. So Ross Atkins showed a true moment of weakness. He blamed everybody but himself for the Blue Jays' collapse in that Minnesota Twins series. And when are we just going to say that the Blue Jays weren't good enough? You know, that maybe the team that they had wasn't good enough to go out there and make a run in the playoffs? Because as we're watching all these other games right here, Nick, there's no way that the Toronto Blue Jays would be in any of these. Now, I'm watching the Phillies go toe-to-toe with the Braves. I'm watching the Arizona Diamondbacks really come into their own here in the National League. And when it comes to the American League, I'm watching the Minnesota Twins really have a revelation and go toe-to-toe with the Houston Astros, who were champs last year. And then on the other side of the coin, you have the Texas Rangers, who look like the best team in the American League. So the Blue Jays, I think, would have had no chance against any of these teams. And Ross Atkins, that didn't stop him from throwing everybody under the bus, including the most notable one, his manager, John Schneider, and it's just not a good look overall.
Yeah, and there's been tons of reporters who have come out and people who aren't even in the baseball universe hating on Ross Atkins. So we're going to break all that down. Before we do, quick reminder, we're very, very close to 9,000 subscribers, and 72% of you guys aren't subscribed. So if you enjoy the daily videos, or we've been doing 2 videos a day recently, so the support's been unbelievable, but go check and see if you're not subscribed, then hit that button and help us get towards 10,000. All right, Peter, let's just get right into it. I have a lot of screenshots. Like you said, we've talked about this a little bit, but it's only getting worse. And the more you think about what Ross Atkins said, the more you kind of realize that it was a bit wild. So this is it was a Reddit post, and it kind of condensed everyone's hate towards Ross Atkins, and it really put into perspective how crazy what he said was. So it was Ben Nicholson-Smith, Shai Davidi, Mike Wilner, etc. really didn't like the Atkins presser. And I'm going to highlight Davidi's here for a second. And there's a special guest who hated on Ross Atkins, who some of you guys might be familiar with if you watch some Raptors basketball. All right, so this is from Ross Atkins' or from Shai Davidi's article. He basically said that, but there might have been a wit in circling the wagons and being as open as he points while avoiding litigation and saying repeatedly, like, we are one team, we aren't good enough this year, and we'll collectively make sure we're better next year. That's what he should have said. Instead, he said, who came up with the strategy? It wasn't me. Who presented it to the coaching staff? It wasn't me. Who was responsible for the, pregame planning meeting? It wasn't me. Who's responsible for locking in the reliever scenarios? It wasn't me. So, Peter, what he could have said is highlighted here by Shai Davidi in that last paragraph, or the first paragraph, the last sentence. That's what a responsible manager you would assume would say, or someone who at least wants to not throw his manager under the bus. Instead, he just deflected all the blame, and you said it. Who knows, maybe Ross Atkins could be lying. In my video yesterday, I kind of discussed about how Buck Martinez might be, thinking so with the way that he was speaking about on John Schneider. So what are your thoughts on just, again, the whole thing? Everyone's, he should have handled it better. We've had a few days to digest it now, and I'm not sure if Ross Atkins is going to be able to survive this media hate. Will he get fired? I don't know, but I think he might be getting pretty close to it with the way that everyone is coming at him here.
Yeah, he's definitely walking that line. There's no doubt about that. And when it comes to Ross Atkins, it's bad when you have Sportsnet publishing these articles. It's not like it's MLB.com or TSN. This is Sportsnet publishing these articles, and Rogers owns Sportsnet, and Rogers also owns the Blue Jays. So when you have Blue Jay reporters that work for Sportsnet coming out and saying these things, the writing is on the wall, at least for me. I think the end is near for Ross Atkins, and he did it to himself. I don't think he was going anywhere. All he had to do was do some damage control in that presser, and he didn't do that. He didn't take any accountability because maybe he thought his job would be on the line if he did that. But he didn't. That's just a sign of irresponsibility out of a general manager. It's not something that should be happening. And I feel bad for John Schneider. I do. I think if Ross Atkins gets fired, John Schneider is going to be the next domino to fall
Yeah.
because the new GM is going to get his own guy. But man, this is just a terrible look. It's a terrible look, and we started it. We started kind of this hate train a little bit a few days ago. Right after the presser, we came out with a video and we said someone's lying here. Maybe Ross Atkins is telling the truth, but even if he were to be telling the truth, you just don't do that. And that's the last resort that you got to take. There was no documented friction between the two sides when it comes to Schneider and Atkins. And now he just revealed that there is. So this is a toxic environment. You could tell that there was a disconnect all season long, whether it be with the coaching staff, the players, the management. Something just wasn't right with this Blue Jays team. And they weren't good enough. I mean, we tried to talk it into existence. We
Yeah.
tried to believe it, but it just was never going to happen. They couldn't hit, and these teams that are left in the playoffs are miles better than the Blue Jays. And I would even include those fringe playoff teams. Yeah, the Twins had a worse record. The Diamondbacks had a worse record, but they've upped their game. The Blue Jays managed to be worse when they got to the playoffs. And that's the difference between a team that is 2 games in, 2 games out, and that's the difference between a team that's fighting for an ALCS or NLCS berth.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe aside from the Orioles, who are suffering from a similar fate to what we did, but yeah, no, I agree. And like you said, we've been saying this now for a few days ever since it happened. Even if he is telling the truth and John Schneider made the call, you don't really go out there and at least handle it the way that he did. And I'm not done with the screenshots yet. We had more people getting in on the actions. This is the kind of the final thing from Shadavidi. What he says and does will carry weight for a baseball side that has underperformed and is ununified. A public that's you can read all this fancy words. Essentially what he's saying is that the team is ununified in a bad place. So Peter, this is from Keegan Matheson, another Blue Jays writer. I forget his actual exact company he works for, but the Blue Jays have their problems.
MLB.com.
MLB.com, there you go. From all the time I spent around this team and Schneider, I believe that Schneider can be a part of the long-term solutions. Perhaps more importantly, he can grow while doing it. Today changed how I view other things, though. I don't agree with that necessarily, but I do agree that a lot of people like this are changing their view on Ross Atkins from something very, very positive to, and we were positive about Atkins before the, whatever this season was in this press conference. I agreed with the moves and we agreed with most of the moves that he made, but it's not, being general manager is not just making moves, it's other things as well. Ben Nicholson-Smith got in on the action. He basically, can pause and read this, he basically ripped Ross Atkins for the way that he, not only the way that he spoke at the press conference, but the way that the team has performed since he came in 2016 or whatever it was, because failed to reach a playoff twice, 0-4 in October. Peter, we haven't won a playoff game since 2016. I don't need to tell all you guys that again, but performance thing is a big issue as well, and clearly he's built the good thing here, but we need to take the next step. And then finally, what you've been waiting for is Michael Grange, a Raptors reporter, said, how weak is this? At the very least, employees operate within the culture the leadership has fostered. Take some ownership versus hanging your hand-picked manager out to dry. Fire this guy. Brutal. So, Peter, a collage of hate towards Ross Atkins, and you'll see it in the title. We think he's walking a fine line. We think he might not survive this, whatever. This rarely happens that a specific individual gets called out so far by every single piece of the media and keeps his job. Will Shapiro and the team let go of Ross Atkins? We don't know. Shapiro does have a press conference on Thursday. I'm curious to see what happens there. And I'm also curious to see when John Schneider finally speaks out on all this and see what he has to say. He'll probably give the comments that Ross Atkins should have given at the press conference. But Peter, any quick thoughts on this before I wrap up and hope that this somehow blows over, or maybe that Ross Atkins gets fired like I know a lot of you want?
Look, I want to talk a little bit about Schneider before we wrap up here. And maybe he's not a part of the long-term solution, but he's still a very young manager. And I think you got to give him a bit more leeway and you got to give him a bit more freedom to make the decisions that he wants to make, because I can guarantee you that Jose Barrios move was not solely his. Yeah. Maybe they were his meetings. Maybe he had conversations with the analytical team, with his assistant coaches, and they came to the decision that was going to happen. Obviously, you want to have a bit more feel for the game at that point, but I think Schneider was very good when he first got hired in the manager role, and he looked to me that he wanted to play his brand of baseball, aggressive on the base pass. He wanted his guys to play a certain way, and they did that. I mean, he had a very good winning percentage in his first half season as a manager. Then when more voices started to come, when Don Mattingly started to be around the team, when other guys, Edwin Encarnacion was making special appearances. Now, I'm not blaming anyone individually, but there were too many pieces of the pie. There was not enough decision making going John Schneider's way. And I think if you give him the freedom, the full freedom over the course of a full season, I think you'll be fine, because firing a manager every year is just not the solution. It's not going to change anything. You got to change the pieces around him, and you got to give him more freedom to make those decisions, because he just didn't have it this year. And I think that's ultimately what did him in. Do I think he's a great manager? No, but I think he can get to that point because he's still very young. He's got some inexperience, but you could tell that he gels well with the guys, with the clubhouse, and they play for him. You know, they want to play for a guy like John Schneider, and he's someone that is, I think, the perfect guy for this job. He just needs a little bit more freedom to do what he needs to do. He has too many voices, kind of like we were talking about Vladdy earlier on in the year when we were saying why he was struggling. He has this guy telling him how to do this. He has his uncle telling him how to do that. You know, it gets too much at a certain point, and your head just explodes. And I think that's what happened with John Schneider this year.
Yeah, it's possible, and I'll let you guys decide in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. I'm a bit less on the Schneider trade, but I think he definitely probably shouldn't get
But
fired.
he's got another 2
And
years
that's the
on his
thing.
deal, and you're still paying Charlie Montoyo. So sure, fire the manager, but what's that going to change if you have guys that are just not gelling together on the field? You know, that's the big issue right now. It's the personnel as well.
Yeah, the players haven't been able to. Yeah, all that aside, the offense has been absolutely horrible for the past, however long, 6 or 7 months. But that'll wrap up the video. Let us know what your thoughts are on that. A lot of crazy stuff going on in Jay's line right now. Thursday is going to be another crazy day, so we'll have you covered all the way up until then. And if you want to check out our video from yesterday, there's a couple of them. The one on your screen right now is about the insane pickoff from yesterday, and some details were revealed about Vladdy, and Buck Martinez speaks out. So make sure to check out that, and we'll see you guys later today.